It's bigger. No, go up. Yeah, right. I'm just gonna get up farther. Good. Keep it moving here. Perfect. Okay. All right. This camera's not on.
It is. I'm just recropping it. Are you comfortable there? Are you able to sit back a little bit more?
Do I need to?
No, it's fine.
Maybe you can pull the camera back a little bit more, kind of right in my face. That's actually a good view. I mean,
okay.
Yeah, absolutely. It's fine.
Okay.
Let me start the recording here.
Recording in progress.
Good afternoon, beautiful people. Good afternoon. So now I need to be looking up and talking into this camera, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. So interesting, because it's a long ways from the screen. So hello, everyone. Bryan Post here. We are just figuring out this thing. Today we've got a new camera setup. So I'm going to have to get used to looking up straight ahead instead of looking at the screen, which is what I would normally do. But the screen is down, so that's a little awkward. But anyway, thanks for joining me this afternoon and taking time out of your amazing days. I need to be able to see the chat here, so I'm going to just open that up. I want to invite you. This is a kind of a, as it was promoted, it's an Ask Me Anything session. So I decided to stand in front of the whiteboard in case anyone has any questions that I get inspired to whiteboard and really just chop it up with everyone and give you any kind of suggestions and insights that I have to offer for whatever situations you have going on. So we don't have a real specific set of topics that we're going to be talking about today. We just want to, answer questions and interact and engage and talk about all the good things. This light is red. Is that cool? We're still good?
What's red?
It's red. I don't know. Has it always been red?
What's red?
This camera light. Is it still on?
Yeah, it's all good.
All right, fantastic.
Yeah,
well, good.
I think that just means it's recording.
All right. So just know that I have no issues whatsoever just going off on whatever tangent and asking questions that I need to. And it is hard to look up so high and
It's okay if you just
and
look
not
at the screen.
not pay attention to everything. Well, if I pay attention to the screen all the time, I'm just gonna be, I think my eyes are, so right now when I'm looking at the screen, where are my eyes at? They're looking down,
They're looking
right?
down.
Yeah, see, that's kind of difficult, but that's okay.
They'd be
That'd
looking
be-
down if you had that other camera too. It'd be kind of the same.
Okay.
I can lower it if you'd like.
No, don't worry about it.
Okay.
We're gonna adjust. We're gonna adjust. Okay, well, cool. Who's gonna ask the first question today? You know, one of the things I've been really wanting to do, so some of you may know me, some of you may not. I'm Bryan Post. I have been specializing in adoption and trauma for pretty much 25 years, going on 25 years now. And I got started, you know, a long time ago. So almost my entire professional career has been working with challenging children, stressed out homes, working with families, all around issues of adoption. I was adopted. I was in foster care for a very short period of time. My sister was also adopted. We were not biological. Grew up in the same home with two loving, well-intentioned parents, but they did not understand trauma. They didn't really understand stress. They didn't understand the unique needs of adopted children, who I like to classify as being stress sensitive and fearful, just at the most basic level. I think when we have trauma in our backgrounds, and I like to really simplify things because I think that helps me really wrap my brain around it in a day-to-day way, is that when we've experienced a lot of trauma, our brains become sensitive to stress. Our body-mind system becomes sensitive to stress, more sensitive than people who haven't experienced a lot of trauma in their lives. And so the significance is when you have heightened stress sensitivity, so as I said, stress sensitive and fearful. So I want to write that down, stress sensitive and fearful. When you have heightened stress sensitivity, you can experience stress through any of your sensory pathways. You can experience it, and we do experience stress through any of our sensory pathways. However, the significance is we are not consciously aware of what may be triggering the stress. And we're not consciously aware even that we are having stress on a stress experience. We're just going through life, and all of a sudden, you know, we feel agitated, we feel overwhelmed, we feel anxious, any number of things. And before you know it, you're having this reaction. Oh, looky there. I didn't know I even had that handy little gadget. I can just mute everyone. I see your hand there, Louisa. I'm gonna be getting to you in just a moment. But we're not always aware. We just feel agitated, we feel anxious, maybe we feel hot. Maybe you feel cold, maybe you feel tired, because that's also a stress reaction. You feel mad. And then we tend to associate that experience with what's showing up in the present, in the moment, without realizing that actually is a byproduct of your cellular system getting triggered at an unconscious level through one of your sensory pathways. What you can see, what you can hear, what you can smell, what you can touch, what you can taste. So those are your 5 primary pathways. However, we also have movement, we have digestion, we have temperature, and we have intuition. So those are secondary pathways. So moving around can be stressful. Digesting food is stressful. Your body temperature at a certain level can be stressful, induce stress. And intuition, you could just have an intuitive sense of something. And even though your prefrontal cortex isn't tied in to that gut level awareness, you can still have a stress reaction, which triggers all of your body mind system and sends you into a situation. So, Louisa, let's start with you. You have your hand up. You can go ahead and lower your hand, and now you can unmute yourself, I do believe, and you can ask your question.
Sorry, can you hear me?
I can, yes.
Okay, now I can see you, and I can lower my hand. Hi, thank you so much for this. I have a now 18-year-old foster son who is no longer my foster son because DCF would not support him being my foster son because they hate me. I don't think I have to go into it. You might have some experience with how when you advocate for them, they hate you. Anyway, he left my house, went home. Now he's back with me. And so I'm not receiving any help to take care of him, which is okay. But the bigger issue for me is that he has these really horrible behaviors. He lies 98% of the time. He has stolen a lot of money from me. He has since he came back this time. Well, he says he hasn't stolen. I also have my house under lock and key, but and he won't accept any help from me. He has the diagnoses are reactive attachment disorder, DMDD, and complex PTSD. In care since 5. I was his 10th foster home, group home, all of it. And he, like when I did the ACEs thing, he had like 27 of them. So really, really horrible. He won't take his meds, which honestly aren't that helpful, to be frank, because he was on some meds before that I think even made him more aggressive. And he won't follow any rules. And I do pretty well at staying regulated, which is very hard for me, but I've been at this for a while now. But there are some things he does that really terrify me, and I need him to follow some rules. And I don't know how to get him to do that.
It's Louisa.
Yes.
Why do you continue to allow him to be in your home?
Because I love him, and I feel like if he so what DCF said to me was, they told me you're not an appropriate foster placement until he was 18. And then the day he turned 18, they dropped him at my house and said, well, now we have a different relationship, so it doesn't matter. And my thinking is, he is less stressed with me than he is. They told me if you can't deal with him, bring him to a homeless shelter, because that's our great child welfare system. And I can't do it. I can't, and I think it's the wrong thing. Like, he needs treatment, not punishment. Like, why would you stress him out even more by making him homeless?
No, you're not wrong. You're not wrong in what you feel. Okay, I'm right along with you. So I believe when you are a staunch advocate with systems of care when it comes to children, I don't believe they hate you. I believe that they're just stressed themselves. And then when you become an advocate, you actually become another threat or another source of stress. And so it's a lot easier for them to not want to deal with you, even though they may respect the fact that you're not giving up and that you have not given up, and you know that they respect you because they brought him back to you when he turned 18, or because they know that it's probably the only place for him. Here's the thing, and this is a real sharp double-edged sword. When you say I can't get him to do anything, there's so many levels to that. And then when you also say, he does some really scary things. One thing that's really important is that you have to be physically safe. You need to be emotionally safe, and you have to be able to do that in order to even just continue to have a relationship with him throughout the remainder of his life. 18, life is actually just starting. So he spent all this time, had all these situations. He's 18 now. He's an adult. Now he can actually go to jail. Now he can actually have bad things happen to him. And unfortunately, and I just want to be really honest with you, because that's the way I like to be, is that he's probably going to make some really bad decisions. And he's already demonstrating to you that he's not going to be able to follow the rules because he's in survival. He's been in survival his entire life. And so he's going to have a lot of challenges. So you need to get really honest with the fact that he's not a 5-year-old or a 10-year-old who you can just get to follow rules. He's following his own rules because that's what he's learned keeps him safe. He knows that you love him. He probably even feels that you love him, and he probably even feels like he loves you. However, when you've been in care since the age of 5, and you have been in countless placements, at the level of your brainstem, you don't trust anyone. When you get stressed, you can't trust anyone because you move into survival. You can only think about your own safety. So he's had a system of care that's kicked him around for a long time. So he looks at the world as though it is out to get him because his brain is perceiving threats all the time. Now, I don't know what your history is. So I would say somewhere in your own history is this need to go above and beyond for this child. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but you don't want whatever that history is and whatever those blueprints are to put you at risk, because then you're doing both of you a disservice. You can be putting him in as at much risk as yourself simply by allowing him to do scary things in your home, especially when you start to have an awareness that this is not safe, whether it's not safe for me or if it's not safe for him. You still have a requirement for the sake of love and for the sake of responsibility to be able to set limits and to be able to maintain them. And he needs you to be able to set limits. And here's the thing, setting limits does not mean not loving. Setting limits does not mean giving up on you. Setting limits does not mean we can't have a relationship. The limit is, I don't feel safe. And if I don't feel safe, I can't take care of you anyway because I'm in survival.
Right. So he does know that. We've been through that. Since he's been back, we haven't had those problems that we had in the past. And his dysregulation, he's never done anything violent towards me. He just breaks things. That hasn't happened since he's been back.
How long has he been back?
About 6 months.
Okay, perfect.
He says horrible things, but he hasn't broken anything. He hasn't stolen anything. He lies all the time, but they're so obvious. It's like, duh. So that's kind of what gives me hope. And he knows that there are some real rules that if he doesn't follow them, he's got to leave.
Okay, good. So you've got some limits and you still got the relationship intact. So that's fantastic. And it's been 6 months. So what's the biggest behavior issue that you're facing? And let me tell you something. 6 months is a really good period of time. I mean, if you can go 6 months without significant behaviors, then you're actually already in a place where you're starting to help his brain to repair. And that's helping him to regain some sustained regulation. Now, when you've got that kind of history, your sensitivity to stress is going to trigger you into behavior challenges frequently.
Yes. The biggest behavior, so he went to high school, went to the local high school, did great when he first came here, straight A's. Then, he has PTSD and it's too overwhelming for him. So that kind of fell apart. Then he went to Job Corps, got into a fight after a week, came home, and now he's trying to go back to high school. So he's been, for the last 6 months, he's been like trying things. And the biggest issue that I've had with him is that he has a girlfriend. And he brings her over here and goes in the room and locks the door. And so I've had a fight with him. I've had numerous fights with him. We kind of compromised that he can lock the door for a little bit of time, but I'm like outside the door breathing on it so that he knows I'm there.
But Louisa, why can't he lock the door? He's
I'm
18.
I know, I'm worried she's going to get pregnant.
You're not gonna prevent that by making him keep the door locked. I mean, he can have sex with her in the car or in the alley before they even come into the house. So you can't see. Here's what stress does. Here's what stress and fear does. Stress and fear causes us to want to control, want to suppress, or want to change. So that becomes the focus. Now, here's the problem, is that when you start moving into a space to where you're trying to control an 18-year-old who adults have been trying to control since he was 5 years old, you're not going to win. You're not going to win. The risk is that you're going to lose the relationship. So whatever relationship that you guys have been able to restore and strengthen over the last 6 months, if you start creating stress around that, you're not going to win. And so the best thing that you can do is you have to honor the fact that he's 18 years old. Now, if you don't want him having girls over, that's one thing. That's a limit. But you need to communicate that. But if your fear is that he's going to get the girl pregnant, well, get him condoms and sit them both down on the couch and talk to them about safe sex and about how scared you are that he's going to get her pregnant. You make it really conscious, make it really obvious, and that's the best you can do. That's the best you can do.
He sometimes will like write. So remember, I know you know this, but he's developmentally not 18. And that's what terrifies me about something happening. And I'm not certain that his girlfriend is 18. She might be 16. Also, I don't know where her parents are because she's at my house every single day. Anyway, we did have a compromise where they can have the door closed for an hour and then have to have it cracked. Also, I'm in a small apartment in this. It's good. I'm in a small apartment in the city, so I can hear everything. And when it's quiet, I'm like, what's going on in there?
Oh gosh. Louisa,
I'm trying.
you gotta let the kid grow up.
I know, but he doesn't need a child.
Again, you can't prevent it.
You're right. We've had the safe sex talk frequently. Perfect. And I told him, he said that they haven't done it, but I told him when you're ready, we can go buy condoms. And he made a joke.
He's ready, he can go buy condoms. You don't need to go buy condoms for. You're not raising a 5-year-old anymore. You're gonna have to come to the awareness that you can't protect him. You can't keep him safe. You can't do those things. The only thing you can do is maintain your relationship with him and influence him. Influence him to make better decisions. Because if there's something within you that is showing up to want to take care of this kid at a level that you can't take care of an 18-year-old, there's something within you, and you 100% know that he's emotionally arrested, developmentally delayed. In your interactions with him, you've got to be able to communicate with him in that way. But you're doing such a great job by allowing him in, but you've got to be able to let him move into adulthood and make decisions, and then be on the back end and support him when he falls and when he stumbles. Because otherwise, it's not going to be sustainable. It's not going to be sustainable for you. It's not going to be sustainable for him.
Yeah, my focus has really been on connection, which is really hard to have with him.
I think you've done a great job.
Yes, we are connected, but I guess the thing is, I can't have the typical expectations for him that I wanted for him.
No, you can't.
Yeah, that's the answer, I guess.
You cannot.
I'm still going to be hovering around that bedroom door, though.
hover all you want. At some point, it becomes creepy mom kind of situation, and you just gotta. I think you're gonna have to really spend some time kind of processing what that is. I mean, I can appreciate not wanting him to get this girl pregnant. You are doing a really good thing. It sounds like you guys have a really good relationship. He probably would not even be in your home if he didn't feel some level of safety. One of the biggest dynamics, and I'm going to say this for the group and then we're going to move on. One of the biggest dynamics and struggles that parents have with teenagers and adolescents is a very interesting emotional dynamic. When children move into adolescence, when they become teens, they naturally start moving towards independence. However, because the very movement towards independence actually creates insecurity. So then as they're moving towards independence, they will oftentimes still do things where they feel dependent. So even though naturally they are moving towards independence, there's still a lot of dependence that is required. That's why they're not adults yet. Now, here's where parents screw up. When they notice their children moving towards independence, the movement of the child towards independence causes the parent to have anxiety. When the parent starts to have anxiety, they start to want to cling to the child instead of supporting the independent development. They start becoming anxious, clinging, and trying to control the natural growth. And as they're trying to control the natural growth, instead of the child being able to continue being dependent as they need to, do you see that glitching?
Mm-hmm.
Instead of the child being able to have the natural dependence, because the parent is anxious and trying to control, it is now forcing the child further away. And then what happens is now we're exacerbating what should be natural development because the child's now feeling controlled and they're getting older, instead of supporting them. Because if you just support them, they'll go and then they'll come back, because that's how we emotionally, cognitively, physically, neurologically, that's how we develop. We grow and then we regress. We grow and then we regress. And the reason you regress is because your developmental system is trying to tighten up everything it needs to be able to make a leap. So when the reason so many parents struggle with their teenage children is because of their own anxiety about the independence that their child is starting to display, and then they forget that the child still has a lot of dependence. And so then there's so much tension that gets created when the child actually needs to look back and find the parent's not there because the parent's upset. Yeah, we're freezing. That's unfortunate. Am I freezing on you guys' end?
Just a little bit.
Glitching up?
It's a delay, but it's okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Super helpful.
Okay, you betcha. Let me go, hang in there. It's still super cool what you're doing, Louisa. I admire that and I appreciate it very much. I would love to return to this camera.
Okay.
And then you could still keep those on, right?
Yeah, I can, but they won't be doing much.
Only if I'm on the board.
Yeah.
If I'm on the board, can you switch over to it?
If you're on the board, I'm not sure if you'll be seen. I mean, if you can, we can try it out with that camera and see if you're still visible on the board.
I'm gonna switch over.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, perfect. I feel so much better all of a sudden. Okay, let's see what we have here in the chat. Hello, Mark. Mark here with Adoptive Family Resource in Atlanta. You've shared before your trainings that opposition to defiant behavior is based in fear. Having a little trouble wrapping my brain around that. Could you elaborate on the fear ODD connection? Oh, I love that question, Mark. So first of all, thank you for joining me. And I would love to talk about the connection between your brain the brain of the child, fear and oppositional defiance. So the first time I ever heard this was over 20 years ago. And it was Bruce Perry. Bruce Perry said, an oppositional defiant child is a scared child. Now, when I heard that, I was like, that's fantastic. But here's the neurologic basis of it. And I'm happy to have you open your mic and we can chop it up a little bit. Here's the neuroscientific basis. Anytime we perceive a new event, we perceive it as a threat until deemed otherwise. So anytime the amygdala has a sensory experience, a stress experience, because remember, the amygdala is all emotional, it's all unconscious, it does not think, it just reacts. Anytime the amygdala has a reaction, we're all aware of fight, flight, and freeze. But here's what we don't realize. Our initial reaction to a stressful experience is always to freeze. We freeze, and then we determine whether we're going to fight or whether we're going to flee. Funny, I'm still sitting here looking at this camera. Can I move this camera? Is that okay? Can I move this?
You can.
Yeah, okay, perfect. That's not staring me in my face. Anytime we perceive a threat, we perceive this, the first thing we do is we freeze, and then we determine whether to fight or to flee. That's where the root of oppositional defiance is at. So in a stressful situation, which you and I may not deem stressful, because remember, anytime we transition, any transition, and this is why I talk about the three pathways of emotional expression: attitudes, feelings, and behaviors. We have to have those pathways. We have to express attitudes. We have to express feelings. If we can't express attitudes and feelings, we drop down to behaviors. Here's the thing. When a child's doing something and an adult asks them to do something else, that child has to transition. The problem is the ask is the stressor. When the stressor turns on, the amygdala freezes. Now, most of us, yourself, myself, and probably a lot of parents and professionals and adults on this call, we grew up where parents make a request and they expect you to comply. And so if you don't comply, that has been labeled over the generations as disrespect, as defiance, as disobedience. Now, that's a working blueprint in our brainstem. So we have the child who has whatever issues and sensitivities they have. We have the adult, which has the working blueprints of how things are supposed to happen, in what format and what time they're supposed to happen. The adult makes a request, the child freezes. Before the child can make a transition, the adult is already creating another level of stress by placing a demand, by asking again, by moving towards them, by threatening. And so then what happens is the child doesn't actually have an opportunity to transition before they move into fight or flight. And now when you move into fight or flight, you're not going to get anything. You're 100% going to get more defiance, because now I'm in survival. So when you're working with defiance, I always say the first thing you have to do is you have to breathe. The parent, the adult, has to breathe. So you make a request to the child, and here's the thing, eventually you need to understand your children enough to know that severe behavior is almost always predictable. Not almost always. Severe behavior is predictable if we slow down and pay attention to it. So when you make a request, you should already know that they're going to be defiant. So if you already know they're going to be defiant, so that's going to change the nature of the request. It may change your tone, it may change your pace, it may change whether you give them a hug first or whether you make some body contact. It could change so much of how you engage in that dynamic. But more than anything, it changes your own vibration. If I already know that you're going to be defiant, I know that your defiance, underneath your defiance is your fear, not your anger, not your hostility, not your disobedience, not your disrespect. See, now that's all old paradigm stuff. If I know that underneath your defiance is fear and stress and anxiety and unexpressed grief and trauma, then I completely change my vibration on how I approach you. And when I change my vibration on how I approach you, I may not even get any defiance. But because I expect it, I make my request, I wait, I move away, I come back, make it again. Not going to make it too many more times. I might just do whatever it is I'm asking you to do. Now, why would I do that? See, that's the part that really throws us off. It's one thing to make the request. It's the other thing to not make the request so often that then you either start getting more upset or you just go do the thing. Because we think by just going and doing the thing, we are conditioning the child to do nothing. But here's what I believe. I believe in a heightened state of stress, when the brain stem's open, when the trauma is exposed, when the child is feeling the most vulnerable, the most threatened, the most at risk, that is the time that we do something in a positive way that plants a seed of love and positivity for the next time the situation occurs. Let me give you another quote from Bruce Perry. He says, "The brain always returns to the way the event was handled the last time." The brain always returns to the way the event was handled the last time. So however I handle the situation around your defiance this time is going to be the first thing your brain returns to the next time when you make a request or there's an opportunity for me to feel defiant. Make sense? You want to chop it up?
Good stuff, Dr. Post. Good stuff.
Right.
I work with so many in my work. I work with so many parents who are dealing with this oppositional behavior. Kind of putting it in context. I asked him to clean up his room, and he just blew a gasket, dug his heels in. So, kind of what you're saying, that's hitting him. That's hitting him at the amygdala level. Transition, change, and he might remember the last time that he was asked to do that, and mom blew a gasket.
Well, so yes, and when the parent makes the request, and the parent is not doing anything to be a bad parent, when the parent makes the request, they don't realize that the stress that gets triggered in the child's amygdala opens up the brainstem, which is where all the trauma sits. So all of a sudden, you have this experience of stress that goes into my brainstem and turns up all this overwhelming energy that I don't even understand because I have no context for it in the moment. So that's the vibration that's created for the kid automatically, and the parent didn't do anything but make a request. Now what happens, and this is where you get the negative feedback loop, is the parent, because of the vibration the kid creates, whether it's the no or the I'm not going to do that or leave me the hell alone, the parent now has a reaction which opens up their brainstem, which creates their negative vibration, which now we get a negative feedback loop. So someone in the dynamic, and I just suggest that perhaps because the adult has the more mature prefrontal cortex, that it's their responsibility to breathe, to slow down, and to soften. And when they do that, now they are creating a new environment, a new physiologic environment, a new emotional environment, a new vibratory environment for the child's brain to not feel as threatened. And then you just keep working through that over and over and over again. And here's the thing, it's so powerful. It's so powerful when you can do it just for a few times. You don't even have to do it a lot. But one of the challenges that you're going up against, Mark, is what a lot of mental health professionals go up against, is that you probably have parents who've been in therapy for a long time, bringing their kids, and the kids have been identified as the patient, as the identified patient, and all the focus gets placed on the child. And then it's so easy for us to buy into that instead of saying, okay, you know what? Thanks for showing me that situation. Let me ask you a question. Take a deep breath. How does it make you feel when he does that? Where do you feel that in your body? When have you ever felt that way before? What are you afraid of is going to happen if he's being defiant? So now I'm going into a process with the parent, right? Because what my ultimate responsibility is I've got to get the parent to be able to dial it down. Let me give you one more. I'm going to give you one very quick example here. I had a mom who reached out to me, and many of you probably heard this story before. She reached out to me because her daughter at the time was 9 years old. Mom was 65 years, retired marriage and family therapist, and every single night was a bath time battle. Mom said that when I go in and I ask my daughter to take a bath, she starts flipping out, kicking and screaming. She falls on the ground, and I let her do it for a while. And finally, I just jump on her and I hold her down until we're both calm. And then once we're both calm, we go into the bathroom. As soon as she sees the bathtub, she starts flipping out, kicking and screaming again. But this time, she's going in that bathtub, whether she likes it or not, whether I've got all my clothes on. I put her in that bathtub. I give her a bath. Water splashes everywhere. Then we both fall out of the tub exhausted. And then she won't go to sleep. Mom says, what do I do about that? So here's what I did. And I'm not going to go into all of this. But so here's the first thing that I did. I said, the next time it's time for a bath, and this is where I really like to encourage parents to slow down and become an investigator, become an observer, become a scientist, become curious about why these things are happening the way they do, because they're always happening in a really predictable way. So I said, the next time it's time for a bath, you go in, you mention to her it's time for a bath, and she starts flipping out, kicking and screaming. What I want you to do, instead of jumping on her, is I want you to sit on the bed. I want you to sit on the bed. I want you to take 3 to 10 deep breaths. And then I want you to let me know how you're feeling. That's it. That was my intervention. I told Mom to sit on the bed, and this had been going on for 4 years. I told Mom to sit on the bed, take 3 to 10 deep breaths, and not do anything else. I just wanted to follow up with her, and I wanted to know how she felt in that moment. I wanted to know her feeling in that moment. I didn't want to know her daughter's feeling in that moment. I already know her daughter's feeling. Her daughter's pissed off. I want to know what Mom's feeling. See, that's the missing piece. And so Mom called me back like 4 days later. I still remember because I was getting out of my car. I had just pulled up in front of a Holiday Inn Express in San Jose. I was looking at the palm trees because I'm from Oklahoma. You don't see a lot of palm trees. I was looking at the palm trees. I pull up, phone rings, I answer, and Mom says, hey, it's Nancy. You're never going to believe what happened. I said, what happened? She said, the other night it was time for a bath. I went in, I told my daughter it's time for a bath. She started kicking out, flipping, just like she always does. But this time I sat on the bed while she's having her tantrum. She said, I felt like an idiot sitting on the bed while my 9-year-old is throwing a tantrum in the middle of the floor. But do you realize in less than 10 seconds, she completely stopped what she was doing, climbed up on my lap as if she needed a hug, realized that she didn't, and then she went and got in the bath. All by getting Mom to breathe and to slow down and to correct her 50% of the dynamic. And then what we found out is her little girl, she had made the connection, but her little girl, when she was 3 years old, picked up by Child Protective Services, had lice so thick on her, you could pick it off with your finger. So taking a bath for her was like post-traumatic stress disorder. And then what was Mom's trauma? When Mom was a little girl, she had an older sister. She said, my older sister used to force me to sit down and she would scream in my face. And she said it used to terrify me. So there's your PTSD both ways. So oppositional defiant is a scared child. That's all you got to do. You don't have to, but that's all you got to do. Just see that. Defiance is fear. Defiance is fear. Defiance is fear. And then you got to realize that defiance causes us fear. And when defiance causes us fear, the first thing we got to do is we got to calm that down. We got to calm our fear down, see our child's fear, slow down, give our child an opportunity to melt, give our child an opportunity to move out of freeze, for their higher level thinking to come back online, for their short-term memory to come back on, and then go and do what it is that we asked them to do.
I'm glad, not to interrupt you, I'm glad you mentioned that story because I remember that story from another training you did. That's good. That's good stuff. I want to give somebody else a chance here,
Sure.
But real quickly, I'm glad you also mentioned Bruce Parody because I remember reading about that in his book, that quote he mentioned about the brain always remembers. I'm going to go back to that. And finally, not to put you on the spot, Dr. Post, but I've got all your books. Can you point me to any sections in your book that kind of review exactly what we're talking about here?
Oh, goodness. No,
Sorry,
I'm
but
going to tell you, I know that I tell that same story in From Fear to Love. And then I know that in the Great Behavior Breakdown, there's got to be a section on defiance. So
Okay.
it's gonna map it out for you, right
Yeah.
up front. And I want to encourage all of you, if you don't have a copy of From Fear to Love, you can go to feartolove.com and you can get an ebook copy absolutely for free. So feartolove.com, you get a free ebook.
Good. That was where I was
Thank you,
first
Mark.
introduced to you 12 years ago in that book.
That's awesome.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'm going to be coming to Atlanta this year, so
Cool.
so be on the lookout. I'm doing a 41 city tour and about 6 different countries.
Cool.
So
It'll be on your website?
I'm going to be in Atlanta. It will be soon. It will be
Great.
soon.
Cool. Looking forward to it. Thanks a lot.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
You bet. Okay, this girl is underage. Could there be concerns? Oh, so someone had the question about the Luisa's child. The question was, if this girl is underage, could there be concerns contributing to the delinquency of a minor? 100% there could be, and I would not doubt it if a 18-year-old is emotionally attracted to someone much younger, but I think that Luis is probably pretty on top of it, and something that would definitely, you don't want to be setting up a criminal situation. Catherine is joining from Austria from Europe. Hello, Catherine. I have some people from over in your area from way back. I have to remember the little country there. Catherine says her foster son is 12 and on the FASD spectrum. 1 year ago, his birth mom died unexpectedly. We met her only twice. He is grieving and he suffers a lot from not knowing a lot about her, about his early life. And at the moment, we are not able to find out more. I'm afraid we won't be able to ever. It is hard to see him suffering and not being able to help him. Oh, that's such a good question and comment there, Catherine. And I want to start with the last thing you said. You said that you're afraid you won't be able to help him. You won't be able to ever help him. But in fact, you already are. He's grieving. And grieving, which is, it is the essential piece to healing. You being able to provide a supportive, loving, encouraging environment for him to share and express anything he needs to, for him to be able to grieve his loss, his hurts, his pains, not only is strengthening your relationship with your son, but it is shoring up the foundation to allow him to explore emotionally whatever may come up in his life moving forward. This is a loss. You may not ever know about his history. Maybe when he's older, if you guys have time, you can investigate more and you can try to learn more. But that's only going to be background filler. That's not going to be the thing that helps him through the grief. The thing that helps him through the grief, which is the most important thing, is that you're providing the opportunity for him to be able to do it. And that is extremely healthy. That's extremely healthy for you as from the standpoint of an adoptive parent, because some adoptive parents would really struggle with that. But that's extremely healthy for you to be able to create, and it is really healthy for him to be able to express that to you. So I just want to acknowledge you at that level. Is there some deeper question to that you want to ask?
No, no. I hope that he will get over it somehow. No, not over it, but this, it's like a map with a lot of white spots on it, and he's suffering from not knowing what those spots would show if he could.
Yeah. And so here's the thing. He's 12.
Yeah.
So so many of those spots are going to be filled in through the development of his personality. As his personality develops, he's going to learn certain things about himself that, because of the nature of your relationship with him, you can reflect with him and help him to just naturally fill in some of those areas just within his own self-awareness. And then as you guys go down that path and explore that, maybe you can do some geneograms, maybe you can do some 23andMe, maybe you can do some of those, what are the trees, what's that tree that people do?
The genealogy.
Yeah,
Ancestry.
Yeah,
Ancestry.com.
Isn't that funny? I know the tree. So like you can maybe explore an ancestry and try to find some of those things. But the most important thing is the security of his relationship with you. As long as he has the security of his relationship with you, whatever comes up, he'll be able to grieve through, he'll be able to talk about, he'll be able to express, process, and understand. And that's going to move him forward, because really his relationship with you is the most important for the rest of his life. And whatever loss or questions he may have. And let me give you a personal story. My sister, growing up, always wanted to know who her biological parents were. They really had no information. They knew some things about her mom, but they'd have no clue about her dad. Her mom was probably a single parent. I, on the other hand, had really no interest. I don't even know that it was a question in my brain to want to know, until I was 21 years old and until I had my first child. That's when I had the first little bit of interest in wanting to know. And it took from 21 all the way to the age of 37. So almost 17 years before I finally met my biological parents, which was great. And not every situation, in fact, research says that 80% of adoption reunifications end disastrously. So I was fortunate because they're it's just been great. However, the parents who raised me are the parents who raised me. They're my mom and dad. In tough times, my dad has passed away. In tough times, that's who I'm going to return to. So he has the foundation of you, and that's going to help him. That's going to help him grow through lots of things. So anytime it comes up for him, just be patient, support him, encourage him, and then let him just continue to work through that. Thanks for joining me. It's got to be getting late there in Europe.
It's 9 p.m. or 10 p.m. It's okay.
Yeah, Luisa gave some good feedback there. Okay, we can still hear you. Okay, my internationally adopted 9-year-old. Okay, my internationally adopted 9-year-old has been home for almost 2 years. Okay, so 9 home for 2, meaning you adopted at 7, is what I'm reading into that. Has recently started demanding presence daily or more frequently, as well as claiming my and others' personal items as his own. It seems like a deep need for him being corrected about it or not, especially if he's not allowed to bring them to school or other places. Then he has meltdowns. Oh, that's an excellent question. Thank you so much for sharing that. So there's a lot to unpack with that. You've got a child who comes from, you say international adoption. My experience with international adoption is mostly orphanages, usually with multiple children, and not a lot of 1-on-1 or even 1 to 2 or 1 to 3 adult time, which means diminished co-regulation. So a diminished opportunity for adults to create regulation for the child to be able to soothe their emotional experience. So then because of that, because of an absence of diminished co-regulation, children gain gain their regulation, their sense of security, their sense of identity through objects. So there's a whole theory around object relations. When a child, children have binkies. Usually they grow out of their little binkies, or they grow out of their little blankies. When they're not able to grow out of that, what happens is they continue to associate a part of themselves with that thing. So your son probably has a real strong association with who he is, with the things that he has and the things that he gets. Now, what do you do with that? Number one, you are going to have to slowly help him develop the ability to co-regulate. He is not going to be open to co-regulation because his system is not used to that. So he can have the things, but you have to be able to show up in a way, in a present way, in a secure way with him, where he can understand that he is not the things, and the things do not define him. The things do not make him. And I know that you're probably having these conversations with him. You're probably having these conversations with him that are establishing that gifts don't mean he is loved and secure. Your love means he's loved and secure. So your ability to give a gift even and say, here's a present. I love you. You're mine, regardless of the gift I give you. Now, I'm not going to give you a gift, and that's going to make you feel really sad. Guess what? I still love you, and you're still mine, and we're going to be okay. And so you have this repetition, because you literally are going to be repairing his brain. So when he wants to go to school and he wants to take these things and he can't take these things, what he's really saying is, if I don't take these things, which is my security, no one's going to love me. If I don't take these things, which are my security of who I am, then I'm no one. And if I'm no one, I'm going to get rejected or abandoned. So there's going to be a process where I had a mentor, her name is Martha Welch, and she would probably say, for the next year or 2 years, you buy nothing, because he has got to get used to the association, not with things, meaning love and regulation, but with your presence and your support, meaning love and regulation. I'm not quite that dogmatic. I believe that you can continue to provide gifts or do whatever it is that you normally do, but you have to follow that with a deep sense of helping him understand that his connection is about him. And that would be, I would spend a lot more time in physical affection. I would spend a lot more time with your 9-year-old like he's 18 months old. I would do a lot more nurturing at a core emotional developmental level. So instead of thinking of him as 9, think of him as 18 months old. And the things that you do with an 18-month-old, start doing those things even though he's 9. So if you give him a toy, have the expectation that you guys play together. If you provide him a gift, have the expectation that you share the gift together. And as you're sharing the gift, maybe you sit on the floor and you pull his back in against you, and you're playing and holding with him. So you're getting the physiologic regulation that occurs while at the same time he's getting the enjoyment of the toy. Because the toy, the external thing, is just what he's learned how to create his dopamine and his oxytocin. You've just got to, over time and repetition, insert yourself into that. So that's a process. So a lot more affection, a lot more time in, a lot more 18-month-old instead of 9. because what you're going to get at 9 is you're going to get a lot of hyper dependence, hyper independence. And it's almost like parentified, except you probably didn't have siblings. So you get a lot of hyper independence, and you want to be able to support that, but you also want to nurture that 18-month-old. And if you do that consistently, if you'll spend the next 6 months focusing on the 18-month-old and not on the 9-year-old, it's going to take you a long ways. And remember stress. The meltdowns, look at that. Let me just, real quick. The meltdown, that's 18 months. The meltdown is 18 months. So when he's melting down, now you've got the 18-month-old. That's when he really needs you to breathe. He really needs you to slow down. He really needs you to soften. He needs you to remember that he's a scared, abandoned, rejected 18-month-old who feels like no one loves him and who feels like he could die. So it's that intense. It's that intense. When he melts down, even though our old paradigm makes us think that kids having tantrums is them just being disobedient or being obnoxious or just not getting their way, actually, it has nothing to do with that. A tantrum is an extreme state of regressed emotion. The child is regressing to a much earlier emotional state. And in that regressed emotional state, there may be a lot of overwhelm. There may be a lot of helplessness. And at the core of that is a fear that I am going to die. When your amygdala opens up that brainstem, at the root of that is a fear that I'm going to die. So you have to see that in that moment of meltdown, you have a very scared, overwhelmed, vulnerable 18-month-old. And then allow that to shift your physiology and show up for that 18-month-old. And if you'll do that consistently, you'll start to have a lot of impact in what you have showing up. All right, looking for some advice on this. He is developmentally delayed with multiple medical conditions. Okay, he's developmentally delayed. You know that, so that is even more. That is even more. Here's something very important. We have a cognitive level of memory. We have a physical level. We have an emotional level, and we have what's called a state level. When your state level, when your emotion gets triggered, it takes over your state level, which is where all your personality is stored. It takes over your state level, so everything gets stirred up. It takes over your physical body, and it takes over your thinking. So the moment you become really stressed and your emotions take over, Alan Shore says, in times of stress, we regress to our developmental zone of comfort. So when you stress, an acting out child is a stressed out child, which is a regressed child. So the developmental delays are all evident in that place, because at 9, think about a 9-year-old who regresses to an 18-month-old. Think about how that would look developmentally. See, those are all points of developmental arrest. And because those are points of developmental arrest, you're going to see that consistently because he's stressed consistently. And as long as he's stressed consistently and in a state of dysregulation, you're going to keep seeing those developmental delays. So your goal is to go back as consistently and as often as you can to that 18-month-old, and maybe sometimes even to the baby, and do reparative things. Do reparative play, do reparative food, sitting with him, feeding him from time to time. You might even give him a bottle if he'll take a bottle. That would be the best. That'd be the best. If you could get him back taking a bottle, once or twice or 3 times a day, that alone, if he will allow you to, and you just say, hey, I missed out when you were a little bitty baby. I would really love to pretend that you're my baby. Would you let me feed you a bottle? That's the language right there. Would you let me feed you a bottle? And if he'll let you feed him a bottle in the morning, sometime in the afternoon during major transitions, and then in the evening before bed, what's happening, it's just beautiful, although we don't talk about it enough. What's happening is that the sensory experience of you holding him, of you making eye contact, of him smelling your breath, of him having a temperature shift, of him having taste. And I always say, put something sweet in the bottle, like chocolate milk or milk with molasses or something like that. Even a protein drink, put a protein drink in it because he's probably got all kinds of sensory food issues. Put a nice high protein drink in it. That process, Fraser Muster from the Canadian Institute of Research said that when we can activate all 5 pathways at any given time, it has a direct brain altering effect. So you are turning on the brain in an enormous way. That's what bottle feeding is. See, people get hung up on, and I've been an advocate for parents bottle feeding their children for decades now. People get hung up on the bottle. They're like, oh, that's childish. Oh, you're treating him like a baby. No, it has nothing to do with the actual bottle. Even though the sweetness turns on oxytocin, it has more to do with you have a moment of vulnerability where your child at 9 now gets to go back in his emotional being and feel like a baby all over again and have all this magical reparative neurochemistry and neurophysiology that's occurring through the context of your interaction. That's a beautiful thing. So if you can do that, if he'll allow it, that would be an amazing healing thing. I hope that's helpful. Heidi says, fierce attachment to objects is a common way of seeking any threat of safety. That is 100% right. When attachments to people have not been secured. Absolutely. And removing the object is felt as removing their fragile source of safety and security. This is a beautiful comment, Heidi, that you've put in here. So I want to suggest that everyone read that and maybe even copy it and paste it in a Word document. It's very good, very good. No, I agree with all of that. When I see a child seeking safety in this way, I strive to deeply honor, respect that strategy, simultaneously build up their relational security bucket so that the physical objects are not needed as fiercely. 100%. That is the recognition that the physical object is them. If you remove the physical object, you are removing their safety. You are removing them. So instead of removing the physical object, let them have the physical object, but let them have it in the context of you. Let them have it in the context, because see what's happening from a neurophysiologic standpoint is the object is what they have learned to be their source of regulation. When you give them the object, so there's no threat, they get to have the object, but you set them in your lap, or you spend time with them, or you're holding their hand, or you're playing with them, or you're playing with them and the object. Now what's happening is your regulatory system is actually speaking to their regulatory system. And that's actually the impact that you want to have, because that's teaching them how to co-regulate. When you can teach them how to co-regulate at a physiological level, the object has less and less power. It has less and less influence. So beautiful. Thank you for that, Heidi. There's another good example that Heidi shared there. I love Bruce Perry too. Stacy Baxter. My 10-year-old adopted son gets in trouble at school for being, is that my friend Stacy Baxter? My 10-year-old adopted son gets in trouble at school for being disrespectful and disruptive during class time. Every time he does this, they tell him to go on a break. This is when he loses it on them. What suggestions would you share with teachers who do this? He has eloped several times for being scared at school. They do not understand him. Okay, so when he becomes disrespectful and disruptive, so let's go back to what Mark was talking about, being defiant. Here's what the school doesn't see. When he's being disrespectful and disruptive, now I love words. We take those words, we look at those words, and those words have intensity. So disrespectful and disruptive are threatening words. So we immediately get anxious. So our perception, our framework creates anxiety, it creates fear. And as soon as we do that, we move into survival. So instead of being able to see the child is scared, instead of being able to see the child is overwhelmed, now we're in a survival battle with the child, and we can't keep them safe. Emotionally, we can't keep them safe. Psychologically, we probably can't keep them safe. Physically, we can't keep them safe. And even physically and psychologically, you're trying to say all the important things to indicate safety. If emotionally you don't feel safe, that's the vibration you're sending. That's the vibration that gets sent. So that goes to his amygdala. He feels more unsafe and then escalates even more. And so then what they're saying to him is they're saying, go away. What do we know about adopted children? Biggest stressors, rejection and abandonment. So when they say go, what do they say every time he does this? They tell him to go take a break. When they say go take a break, that's actually escalating him because now he feels abandoned. What I would encourage the teachers to do, see the disrespect, see the disruptive as evidence of him being stressed and him moving outside of his window of tolerance for being able to regulate it. I just wrote a book. Everyone in here, I just wrote a new book, and it's just an ebook right now. We might publish it, but everyone who's on the call, I'm going to make sure we send you a copy of the time in solution. How long have I been talking about time in instead of time out? That's what they're doing. They're giving him time out. He doesn't need time out. He needs time in because he needs the security and the regulation that they can provide for him. But first, they have to see that he's not a threat. They have to see the scared child. They have to see the scared 2-year-old. That's the key. That's the linchpin. You got to see the scared 2-year-old, almost for all of you, including Louisa and her 18-year-old. If you can see the scared 0 to 5-year-old child in the physical being, it will be revolutionary. See the scared child. See the scared, and the reason I say 0 to 5 is because that's where most of us have some of our most significant traumas. And when we become stressed, that's where we revert back to. See the scared child. See the scared, I used to call it seeing through a trauma lens. The other thing I talk about is it's not about being trauma informed, it's about being trauma responsive. You can be trauma informed all day, but guess what happens when you're just trauma informed? See, that's a cognitive framework. The problem is when you become stressed, our emotion takes over. So if you're just trauma informed, your emotion takes over, your thinking becomes confused and distorted, your short-term memory suppresses, and guess what? Now you're not thinking clearly. You're not trauma informed anymore. Now you're trauma reactive. So instead of being trauma informed, we have to be trauma responsive. You got to be able to see trauma and you have to be able to respond to it instead of react. But the only way to respond to it is to not see the threat. You've got to be able to see the fear. You've got to be able to see the stress. That's the paradigm shift. So get the teacher, Stacy, to see a 2-year-old instead of a 10-year-old and get them to see a scared 2-year-old. We do have time, Heidi. Let's see. We're scheduled for an hour, but I'm going to go till 1:30. So we have another 15 minutes. And let me just say, if you don't have Fear to Love, go to feartolove.com and get the book. I don't know if Ashley is in here or any of my people are in here. Post that link in the chat. You can get the book. Got a lecture tour, 41 city lecture tour we are putting together right now. Love to see all of you. And I'm also in the midst of our cohort 1 Fear to Love certification. So I have a whole certification that I put together. And right now we've got 15, I think we have 15 people in our first cohort. Our goal is to put 30 in there. So we have 15 more slots. If you want to get in the cohort 1 certification, it actually is it's going to qualify you for level 1 and level 2 certification for the price of level 1. Once we get through cohort 1, all that's changing. So cohort 1 is going to get a whole bunch of really cool opportunities to hang out with me. My cohort, we're spending right now, we're every 3 weeks out of the month, we're at least on a call. I'm doing the calls live, answering all the questions, teaching all the content live. So the cohort 1 is getting live certification with me. and live interaction and live engagement. And so it's super cool, but you can find out all the details for that at feartolove.com. And April 11th, 12th, we'll be doing an in-person 2-day Fear to Love intensive in Fort Worth, Texas. So if you get signed up into the certification, you're going to come to Texas in April, spend 2 days, really 3 days, an afternoon and evening and 2 full days. And then the evening of the last day, you're going to come out to my house and I'm going to cook you dinner. I'm actually not going to cook you dinner, but I'm going to provide you dinner at my house in Texas. We'll get to all hang out. So feartolove.com, check it out. Okay, Heidi, I have a question if we have time. Curious on your take broadly on supporting kinship caregivers activated by unprocessed lifetime trauma and intergenerational trauma, especially if they're not ready, interested in seeking their own therapy. You want to unmute, Heidi?
Yes, and I'm so sorry. I'm going to press you on your like 30-second version of this, but you can stay on with some of my team if you have more insights because I do have to hop off. But I'm thinking of I am very fresh off actually terminating when I had to switch agencies, but fresh off of just a very much loved family that I treated, I think, for almost 4 years, with a grandmother raising her grandchildren, and her own survival strategies are at odds with her little ones. So textbook, the little recipe you shared earlier about helping the parent, and even being able to see the scared child and defiance as fear, that is such a threatening belief for her to even tolerate, right? You say, oh, your grandson is scared. Oh, no, he is not. Absolutely not. He's not, he's, you know what I mean? That whole thing, right? Where it's like, because she's in the reasoning, because she's scared. She's the scared child.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And that is number one, where the power of relationship really comes in. So creating that relationship as a therapist to the client, so that here's what we don't see a lot of times. We're always processing. We're always being triggered. We're always being challenged. The words we use is, oh, I don't have time for that, or I don't want to do that, or I've done that, or I've dealt with that. But the proof is in the reaction. So when the reaction comes up, you subtly and softly say to grandma, wow, grandma, how does that make you feel right now? Well, I feel mad. Whew. Now I'm slowing. You see that I'm slowing way down? I'm slowing way down because now I got to see grandma as a scared child. And so as I see grandma as a scared child, I may even not even look at her anymore. I may wander off a little bit because I don't want her to be overwhelmed too fast because she's so sensitive. So if we're sitting here making eye contact and I sense a lot of, big emotion from her, big challenge, I might actually move away a little bit. And then come back and say, when have you ever felt that way before? Because see, in the upset, it's when the work is happening. The challenge is that we just have to get sophisticated enough to slow ourselves down in those moments so we can stay really present to the parent or the grandparent and the child when those moments are happening. So we slow them way down, and we by slowing it down, you open up the sensitivity. And I'm gonna give you a powerful, really quick, powerful strategy. Take the child, put the child in grandma's lap. Boom, a lot of vulnerability right there. Put grandma's arms around the child. Ask grandma to breathe in. And then say to grandma, how much do you love him or her? So now you're creating that safety. You're watching grandma's physical discomfort because she was probably never held that way. And as you're watching her physical discomfort, now you're working in her process. So then she communicates her love. She communicates her affection. She communicates her fear. She communicates her worry. And then while grandma's still there, say, Grandma, were you ever held like this? And so now it's like you can't go anywhere with that. So here's where I like to go. Let's say grandma says, oh no, I'm not doing that. And she says, well, you got to get off or whatever. Complete rejection, whatever. That's great. That's great. And the reason that's great is because she now just made it obvious where so much of the work has to happen. And then the key is just to slow down and be patient with her as she unfolds into some of that process. Thank you, Heidi. Have a beautiful day.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for the time. Bye.
All right, a question about the bottle. We bottle fed our adopted son for about 8 to 12 months, from 4 months to at least a year, okay, with several disruptions. Trying to send to the family, DHR, trying to send to the family that finally stopped. Both siblings would pinch him and steal his food secretly until we found out. He is now 10, would happily take a bottle. We tried this again a few years ago, though not consistent. He loved it and asked to get a bottle for a while after where he drank it himself. Would we still need to redo this more consistently? I would, here's the thing. Here's the magic of the bottle. The magic of the bottle is that when the child no longer needs it emotionally, developmentally, they won't take it. So you don't want them to just hold it themselves, because wherever he came from or whatever experiences he may have had, he probably just was pretty independent in having to do that. So it's not about holding it himself and having the bottle. It is about being able to hold him and feed him a bottle like you would a child. That's the healing. When he no longer needs it, he won't take it. One day usually happens within a year time frame, could be a lot shorter, could be 30 days. He'll just say, nah, I'm good. As soon as that happens, you know it's done. It's all been cleaned up, what needed to be cleaned up. So if you think he would love to have that bottle, grab onto that and take advantage of that opportunity for that great affection, that great oxytocin, those great endorphins and dopamine to be released, and for that great nurturing and that great relationship building and that deep regulatory connection to occur. Wow. Wow, wow, wow. Do it. Take advantage of that for sure. Heidi put another book in here for highly relational sensory experiences. Make sure you take a note of that. And let me see what else we got. Doing time in for decades. Also, best recommendation for 6 kids, all huge trauma background. Okay, Jessica, the best recommendation for 6 kids, all huge trauma background, except maybe the youngest I just mentioned. It's not possible to do the constant time in with that many kids. We have been doing our best with stations and therapeutic parenting. Just curious if you have any other suggestion. Thank you. Well, first of all, I'm really curious what therapeutic parenting means, because that can mean a couple of different things. But overall, when I say therapeutic parenting, I mean showing up for your child like a therapist hopefully would, present, supportive, encouraging, understanding. 6 kids. The very first thing that pops in my head is you've got to get really good at breathing. You've got to get really good at slowing down your own physiology, because 6 kids, the energy and the vibration speeds up really quick. So really work on your conscious breathing. I would probably start practicing conscious breathing moments with all your kids. I have a bowl. Everyone in my certification gets a bowl. You hear the bowl? The bowl is a cue to take 3 deep breaths. Get your kids conditioned for that. Next, I love that you said that probably the youngest is the one who's got the least trauma. Guess what? When stress really sets in, all of your kids are going to be about the same age as the youngest. So put that in your mind. When stress gets high, all of them are going to be about the same age of your youngest. Now, here's the thing. Start in your regulatory efforts, in your time in efforts, start with the child who needs it the least. Completely different paradigm shift. You got 6 kids. They're all on the different levels of their sensitivity. When shit's hitting the fan, and mama's like, ah, breathe, slow yourself down, focus first on the one who's the least sensitive. Connect, secure, get them doing whatever you need to get them doing. Then go to the next. Connect, secure, get them going, and go work your way all the way up to the most overwhelmed, the most dysregulated, the most stressed. Now, why do I say do that? Because during the time that you are working with the least sensitive, the child you can regulate the most effectively, not only are you giving yourself an opportunity to get more regulated and to get more repair in a more reparative present state by starting with the least vulnerable, the least demanding, but you're also giving the child who's the most sensitive an opportunity to settle himself naturally, him or herself naturally, without overwhelming threat. See, if you go straight to him, he's already in a heightened state. I'm just saying he, it could be her or they, whatever, it doesn't make any difference. That individual is already in a heightened individual state. Usually that's the worst time to approach. Start with the youngest, work your way up. And then now you've got all the way up to 5. 6 is probably already settled. By the time you get to 5 and 6 is still activated. Now you're going to slow down, you're going to turn, and you're going to give 6 full attention. Sit down on the couch where they can all come to you if they need to, but 6 is getting full attention. Full attention. And you can give 6 full attention while you're patting backs, picking up. You can still give 6 full attention. Attention. Attention does not mean you have to be listening to me. Attention does not mean you have to be right next to me. Attention does not mean you have to be looking at me. Attention means I am focusing my attention on you. And that very state is sending a calming, regulated vibration. And then you sit down, pull them all in, tell them how much you love them, process with your children their stories. Let me say this to all of you. Don't be afraid to talk to your children about their histories. You may not know all the details. You may not have all the paperwork. Don't be afraid to let them guide and let them tell you. You just ask and you just listen. Because a lot of times that's the first opening to creating an opportunity for them to start to grieve. And you can be sad for them. You should be sad for them. It is perfectly acceptable. Hope that's helpful.
Thank you so much.
You bet. No problem. Terry says, if we can't make it in April due to previously scheduled mission trips, how can we still get the benefit of it if we're already paying for the cohort? Oh, there'll be other in person. So if you can't make it in April, that's fine. There will be other in-persons when we have other cohorts, because the in-person is going to be a requirement for level 2. So at some point, whenever you get an opportunity to do it, you'll be able to do it. So no problem there. All right. Awesome. Okay. God bless all of you. Thank you so much for joining me today. Remember, feartolove.com, get your free ebook, find out about the certification. Oh, one more thing, bondify.ai. Everyone on here today, I want to give you a special gift. I'm going to put this in the chat, meeting group chat. Okay. Bondify.ai is the world's first AI-driven parenting support app for adopted parents. I developed it. It's me. I've created a Bryan Post AI. So all the questions that you asked today, you have the opportunity to ask me inside of Bondify.ai. So here's the gift. I'm going to give everyone Bond30 is a special code, gives you a free month to use it and test it and play with it. So usually it's 14 days, but if you use code Bond30, you'll be able to use Bondify.ai for 30 days. It's an app you put on your phone, Android, Apple, it's in the Apple Store. And the more information you give me, my AI, the more information you give me, the more accurate responses I can give you, and I can give you real-time, in the moment responses. You're literally gonna feel like you are texting me. So version 1 is texting, version 2 is gonna be physical and audio, but you will feel like we are having a conversation, and you can ask me anything. In fact, I would encourage you today, go in there. I didn't even push enter there. There it is, Bond30, I'm sorry. Go in there, load it up, and then ask me the same questions you asked today. And what you're gonna find is you're gonna get much of the same feedback. Sometimes I give too much. And so what you need to do is you need to save that, copy it, paste it into a note and print it off, read it, spend time with it. And then it's got my latest adoption parenting course is loaded in there. It's a series of daily lessons that I give. And there's so many other resources, and just as great, it's a community. So we're creating the world's biggest community for adopted parents. So Bondify.ai, the world's first AI-powered parenting support app for adopted parents with my knowledge base already programmed in it. Go enjoy it, take advantage. God bless you. Thank you for showing up. It's been great. I look forward to doing this again. I actually have this fantasy in my head that one of these days I'm going to do 24 hours. I think Gary Vee, who's one of my mentors, I think he has done something like that. He does a lot on social media and building community. I think he's done 24 hours. I have this delusion that I'm going to do 24 hours of this. It's super cool. I don't know if I have that bandwidth though, but it's in there. All right. Thanks for joining me. You guys take care. Be sure to hit me up on Instagram, Bryan Post Official, also Bondify AI Official, and love to hear from you, and keep up the great work.
Recording stopped.